Good afternoon, everyone. It's my pleasure to be back again in MODS, and nice to see such a large crowd, and it gets to be bigger every year. I'm sure, we are going to have a good time, discussing all the different kind of things that are happening in the application development space. So, let's start off. In 1826, John Constable, the painter, painted the painting on the left. That's Salisbury Cathedral. And this is in 1826 on the left. In 1913, 87 years later, is a landscape painting by Vasily Kandinsky, the father of abstract painting. And that is how landscape paintings started looking. So in just 87 years, the history of human painting is about, 15,000 years. This is how painting started looking. That's kind of shift that, the world of art went through. Now, smartphone and smartphone development, all of these application world that we live in, is just about, 4 or 5 years old, maybe a little longer. Depends on what you consider as the point of genesis. A similar kind of shift is happening, maybe more dramatic than we can ever imagine. Now, there are a lot of debates that we hear in all of these conferences, and the primary one is the one about which platform. If I am an application developer, what is the primary platform on which I need to work on? I think that debate is somewhat settled. As you can see, this is Q3 mindshare data, and 2, Android and iOS, just rules. And it's getting, I think these pillars are getting sharper and sharper and bigger and bigger. And so the differentiation is getting to be more and more. So one kind of debate seems to have got settled. But is it true really? Because there's a new entrant. As much as Android and iOS takes up 34-32%, there is HTML5 coming very quickly. So although we just thought that the battle has somewhat settled, there's a new entrant. And especially I think you guys are going to talk a lot about hybrid apps and all that. One should be very, very attentive to this space. Let's see the other big shift that is happening. The whole concept of monetization. We were talking about, commissioned and contracted work. That's how application development started off. Then this whole model of freemium, free and then premium. That is changing very, very rapidly. And now we have things like in-app purchases, in-app ads, the whole concept of pay-per-use, pay-per-download. These have become so much more dominant. The other classical problem that application developers have been grappling has been with clutter. Thousands and 10,000s, touching millions. All these apps land up in the marketplace. How do I get out of this clutter? So I just want to kind of share with you a kind of an example from a different world. And when I mean different world, really different world. In the times of Galileo, there were only a handful of planets that we knew of. Then with the invention of the telescope, things became more. Added just in a couple of centuries, we could just add 2 or 3 more. That's all. Now this picture, a recent picture, shows a graphic of 1,100 exoplanets. Exoplanets are planets outside the solar system that we have discovered. Now out of this dark sky, where everything looks the same, we have been able to find out planets that look like us, like ours, Earth. How did it happen? Because of the right thing, signal processing improvement, and also in terms of these kind of completely new astronomical devices. So what made that happen is intent. When people started really looking for those specific objects, they could find them. And that's the key message I want to leave behind today, that it's not about clutter, it's not about lost in the wilderness, but it's about discovery. So one of the things that we need to change in the entire approach to how people who use application is how can they discover them. So one clue maybe we can learn how people can discover is from this world that we're quite familiar with. People from our generation maybe will be able to relate this much more, that once upon a time, not very long ago actually, we had only one marketplace called Doordarshan. People who wanted to know about how pesticides work got to know from that. People who want to know about lives of walruses, that was the same place. If you want to know about things like how to make future trading, Doordarshan. There was only one place where people had to go. But that changed very rapidly, and the world of television changed dramatically, where we all felt lost. But what happened after that is the concept of you. Right. People discovered that only if you want to see about walruses, you will go to a specific channel. If you want to know about today's stock trading, you will go to a specific channel. If you want to follow the intrigues of families, mother-in-laws, and so daughter-in-law drama, you will go to specific channels. So there was a platform which was specifically engineered for a specific user. And the center of all of that became you. And that is how that specificity changed the concept of whether somebody was lost or not. Now you don't feel lost in the world of television, do you? No, because you know exactly where to go and see what. This is the other thing that changed, and is changing very, very rapidly. We were talking of content all this time, that content can drive innovation, content can do all those things, but it's all being replaced by context. One has to know in what context one user is using your application. A good example would be, let's say one has come up with a healthcare app. Now you cannot think of making a generic healthcare app. That has no meaning anymore. A person who is having a toothache is a very, very different person from somebody who is having a terminal ailment. And how we understand each of these users will help us to address their specific needs. And that you, that me, that specific individual will determine whether our application is successful or not. There's the other big change that is happening. Just like content, once upon a time, again, not very long ago, because things are changing so rapidly, we are almost losing time, losing the perspective of time in our space. Creativity was a dominant force. One had to be creative to make applications, fly. But realize now that there are two major thrusters available. One, devices like ours are sensor platforms. How we use the sensors and how we take it to the user is going to determine the successes of our application. And of course, the last one that would move you out of the orbit is analytics. There's so much of data available at every point of interaction, is that how we use that data, analyze it in a meaningful manner, and then bring it back to the user is going to determine, again, how our applications are used and how they are successful. It seems Alexander the Great cried when his court philosopher told him that there are many more worlds than this. He said, I have to conquer so many more? One is not enough. So this is the opportunity that we have now as application developers. It's just not a smart. Soon we will not have mobile developers conference, right? Because the word mobile may be replaced by something else, because it's one different kind of an environment. It's just not the device that we knew as cell phone. It is a multiverse which are connected by multiple ways, And application developers now can write applications which work, interact, use, analyze all of these connected ecosystem together. That's all I had to say today. I'm sure that you will have a lot of interactions going forward today and tomorrow, and spend a lot of time settling these debates, opening up new ones. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, I'm available. We can have a few questions, and then you can go ahead with the rest of the afternoon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. If you have any questions, you can raise your hand. We'll have a mic passed on. Since we have about 10 minutes of switching time, we can use that for questions.
Yeah.
Thank you for that wonderful information that you have given. I had a query that when we are talking about connecting so many different kinds of devices which will be used in different scenarios and environments, are there any protocols being developed, or are there already protocols which have been developed to ensure this compatibility between different vendors and platforms and so on?
Yeah, so answer yes and no. Okay, there are already some protocols, like I talked about. If you look at our Samsung phone, right, there is the Samsung accessory protocol, which is actually shipping in all the current phones, which helps you to connect with different accessories. Then we have, I think we can spend time at our booth, and they'll talk about something called the COD SDK. That is, I think a talk is there tomorrow, which is an SDK that is engineered by which you can start writing applications to connect multiple devices. So there are protocols, you can't say there's one industry protocol, but I think OEMs like ours have protocols by which we are able to connect and seamlessly connect and share data, share screens. All of this is already in place. Okay, thanks.